What happened if you got lost 50,000 years ago? You've been lost before, maybe in a shopping mall as a child, maybe on a hiking trail where the path suddenly disappeared, maybe in a city you didn't know, with a dead phone and no signal. And even then, your heart started beating faster, your stomach tightened, something deep inside you whispered, something is wrong. Now imagine that feeling. But there are no roads, no signs, no maps, no phone, no rescue team, no place to ask for directions, just you. And 50,000 years of wilderness stretching in every direction. Getting lost today is frustrating. Getting lost 50,000 years ago, that could be a death sentence. And the terrifying part is that the first thing trying to kill you probably wasn't a predator. It wasn't hunger. It wasn't even the cold. It was your own mind. Let's start with the world itself, because the world of ancient humans was almost unrecognizable compared to ours. There were forests so dense that sunlight barely touched the ground. Frozen landscapes where every direction looked exactly the same. No cities, no landmarks, no glowing lights in the distance. Nothing that told you where home was. Only land, endless land. And yet ancient humans were surprisingly good at navigation. In fact, they were probably far better than most people alive today. Their survival depended on it. They learned the shape of hills, the movement of the stars, the direction of seasonal winds, the location of rivers, the behavior of animals. They carried maps inside their heads, not paper maps, mental maps. Maps built from years of experience, which means ancient humans did not get lost easily, but accidents happen, they always have. Maybe you followed an injured animal too far, maybe a storm rolled in unexpectedly, maybe thick fog covered the landscape. Maybe you wandered away from camp while gathering food, or maybe you simply made one mistake, one wrong turn, and suddenly everything looked unfamiliar. At first you would probably stay calm, you'd retrace your steps, look for a familiar tree, a rock formation, a reef, anything. But as the minutes passed, something uncomfortable would begin to grow inside you. Doubt, then worry, then fear. Because the longer you searched, the more lost you seemed to become. Modern survival experts have discovered something fascinating. When people realize they're lost, their brains often become their worst enemy. Panic takes control. People stop thinking clearly. They rush. They make random decisions. They waste energy. They move without a plan. And every mistake creates another mistake. Ancient humans understood this better than most. From childhood, they likely learned a simple lesson. Stop, listen, think. Because moving in the wrong direction could carry you farther from your group. Staying calm might save your life. And staying alive depended on one thing above all else. Finding your people. Humans were never meant to survive alone. We evolved in groups. Groups hunted together, traveled together, protected one another, shared food, shared knowledge, shared survival. A lone human was vulnerable. A group was powerful. That's why, when someone disappeared, people searched. These weren't strangers. These were family members, friends, hunters, storytellers, parents, children. Every person mattered. Losing one individual wasn't just emotionally painful. It weakened the entire group. One missing person might be the best tracker, the best hunter, the only person who knew where water could be found during a dry season. Knowledge was survival, and every human carried part of it. So when someone went missing, people looked. But searching created a dangerous problem: search too far. And now the searchers might get lost too. One missing person could become 3, then 5, then more. Ancient humans had to be careful, methodical, disciplined, because the wilderness punished mistakes. And sometimes, despite everyone's efforts, nobody found you. Now the real challenge begins. Night, the moment ancient humans feared most. As the sun disappears, the world changes. Temperatures drop. Shadows stretch. Sounds become louder. Stranger, more threatening. You gather sticks, build a fire, and sit beside it. The fire becomes your entire world. A small circle of light surrounded by endless darkness. Beyond that circle, anything could be waiting. A snapping branch, rustling grass, heavy footsteps. Your imagination starts filling the darkness with dangers. And sometimes your imagination is correct. Because 50,000 years ago, the wilderness was full of predators. Cave lions, massive hyenas, wolves, huge bears, animals far more dangerous than most people ever encounter today. Most weren't actively hunting humans, but a lone human, separated from their group, exhausted, afraid, that was a different story. The fire helps. Predators generally avoid flames, but fire doesn't remove fear. It only pushes it a little farther away. You spend the night listening, watching, waiting, sleeping only for a few minutes at a time. Every sound pulls you awake. Every shadow seems alive. And when morning finally arrives, you face a new problem: water. Humans can survive weeks without food, but not long without water. Ancient people knew this. Water meant life. Without it, your body begins failing surprisingly quickly. Headaches, fatigue, confusion, poor judgment, and poor judgment in the wilderness is incredibly dangerous. Fortunately, ancient humans were skilled observers. They understood the landscape. Birds often travel toward water. Animals create paths leading to water sources. Greener vegetation often signals moisture nearby. A valley may hide a stream. These clues weren't special survival tricks. They were basic knowledge. Knowledge taught from one generation to the next. The same way modern children learn traffic rules. But even with water, another threat begins growing. Hunger. The human body burns enormous amounts of energy, especially when stressed, especially when walking, especially when afraid. And fear burns energy faster than many people realize. The temptation would be to eat whatever you could find, but that carried its own danger. One poisonous berry, one toxic plant, one mistake, and your situation becomes far worse. Ancient humans spent years learning which foods were safe. Even then, mistakes happened. Days pass, your energy falls, your confidence falls, and something else begins happening. Something far more dangerous than hunger: loneliness. Modern studies show that isolation affects the human brain remarkably quickly. We are social creatures. Our minds expect other people. Conversation faces, voices comfort. Remove those things and the brain begins changing. Thoughts become darker. Fear becomes stronger. Hope becomes harder to maintain. Every problem starts feeling impossible. And this may have been the true nightmare of being lost 50,000 years ago. Not the predators, not the cold, not even the hunger. The feeling that you were completely alone, because humans were never designed for that. Yet despite all these dangers, people survived. We know they survived because we're here. Archaeologists have found evidence of injured prehistoric humans who recovered from serious wounds. People who could not possibly have survived without help, which means groups searched, groups cared, groups found each other again. Some lost individuals probably followed rivers home. Some recognized distant mountains. Some spotted smoke rising into the sky. And some simply refused to give up, one step at a time, one decision at a time, until eventually they found their way back. And maybe that's the most important lesson hidden inside this story. When people imagine ancient human survival, they usually picture strength, spears, fire hunting, fighting predators. But those weren't humanity's greatest weapons. Our greatest weapon was each other, because getting lost 50,000 years ago wasn't terrifying because the wilderness was dangerous. It was terrifying because it separated you from the people who kept you alive. And the next time your GPS loses signal for a few seconds, or you find yourself briefly unsure of where you are, pay attention to that small flash of anxiety. That feeling is ancient. Older than cities, older than history, older than civilization itself. It's a message carried across thousands of generations, a reminder from your ancestors that somewhere deep inside your brain, a part of you still remembers a world where being lost could mean never finding your way home again.